So my name is Aman. I'm a product manager at Arise. I'm honored to be joined by Chaoyu, the CEO and co-founder of BentoML, and Kratz, our sort of principal research engineer at one of our customers, BazaarVoice. So what we're going to be talking about is actually, let's say, actually, just a quick show of hands. How many folks are using LLMs in production today? Actually have LLMs in production? Okay. And how many folks are experimenting with LLMs right now, maybe with personal projects? Awesome. The goal of this chat is going to be to go from the second show of hands to the first show of hands. So we have some really incredible, kind of experiences here through BentoML and their tool for orchestration, and Lou's experience at BazaarVoice, really kind of talking about LLMs in production. So first, actually, Chaoyu, maybe if you wanted to give just a brief introduction of yourself and a little bit kind of building off of the demo, what do you kind of see as being the broader vision for BentoML when it comes to deploying LLMs and sort of being that layer?
Absolutely. Very happy to be here. And my name is Chaoyu. I'm the founder and CEO of BentoML. Tim gave a very nice demo earlier. BentoML is a framework for serving and deploying AI models. It's best suited if you are looking to get a pre-trained model, or if you have your own fine-tuned trained model and looking to get them into production. BentoML offers a really nice developer experience for you to define things like inference pipelines, business logic, or APIs around those models, and make sure that your workload runs efficiently in production and scale to support real-world traffic. Specifically in the context of large language model, I think the OpenLLM project is definitely one aspect of that vision, where we help companies who have data privacy concerns, who's looking to deploy and host their own large language model. We help make that process really easy for developer to get started, to experiment with different models locally, as well as scale those deployment in the cloud. But I guess there's another part there are so many new patterns in terms of LLM application. We are seeing, for example, Jerry just showed the fine-tuned embedding models. Those are actually not large language models, right? They have been around for quite a while. You can easily fine-tune them to have a better representation of your own data set. But now, when you think about getting them into production, you are looking at something that's compute heavy. It's quite hard to scale. If you just put like a Python web stack in front of the model, it doesn't really scale to support a lot of users and throughput. So that's where BentoML can actually come in and makes it really easy to scale either real-time traffic, or in the rare case where you have to kind of re-index everything in your vector DB, it supports batch inference as well. I guess real quick, another example would be something like multimodal application. Examples such as Visual ChatGPT, where a powerful language model like GPT-4 will act as the orchestrator that calls into many other vision models or NLP models. So in those cases, BentoML would make it really easy to orchestrate those applications to scale those inference at scale.
Awesome. I feel like the scale component is probably going to be a recurring theme as we kind of talk about LLMs in production. I think that's a good segue into Lou. Would you like to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about what BazaarVoice is doing when it comes to LLMs and sort of the challenges?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Kratz. I'm a principal research engineer at BazaarVoice. If you don't know what we do, well, we'll talk about that later. So we've actually been doing AI at BazaarVoice for over 10 years. So we also got a little sidetracked by the LLM craze. So I'll stick my answer of what I'm currently doing to what we're doing with large language models, if that's all right. So the first thing we did was kind of what you'd expect. We go after that low-hanging fruit, which I recommend everyone does. And we shipped a bunch of features that were really around copy editing. They're a natural fit for large language models. They make sense. Users who had seen ChatGPT got it right away. And they were easy to get out. And these are the kind of things you'll expect to see in email and Office. We're all going to see them in the next year, right? Right now, I'm working on a RAG system, so I was really excited about everything Jerry was laying down today. I'm going to have to talk to him during networking. And the third use case we're using large language models for is actually for ourselves. So there's a big interest, I think, in the industry to see how we can increase our workflows, make our workflows easier using large language models. And it's really fascinating to hear people talk about the maturity of where we are on the technical side and the desire of where we can go from the interest in the public. So we're actually using it on our team to do a lot of things like Jerry was talking about, like checking our data and doing some summaries and labeling and checking questions. So we're using it quite a bit on our team to help us get our data together for our data science projects or our regular machine learning models that we're shipping out.
Awesome. I feel like we're going to have to go into the weeds in that one a little bit for just like how to get started. But maybe for the folks in the room here, what does BazaarVoice do and how does scale play into that, into your philosophy here when deploying?
Yeah,
models?
so scale is a big issue for us. So for those of you who don't know, BazaarVoice is our main business line is gathering and curating user-generated reviews for e-commerce websites. So if you go to Best Buy, if you go to Walmart, if you go to Home Depot, and you write a review or see a review, that's all hosted by us. So we have a big scale. We get about 9 million new reviews per month, and I think I forget the number we're sitting on now. I used to have a cool slide on it. And that is not something we can send to OpenAI on the cheap, or even feasibly within a month, right? So often what we'll do, but this plays nicely into the machine learning lifecycle and LLMOps lifecycle, because you don't expect to put all of your data into an application right away. So we often do limited releases to start out, and this helps us prove feasibility. So as many of you know who haven't, or who have seen who haven't shipped one yet, if you're playing with one, you think it's kind of cool. You're not really sure if it's going to make sense when you get it out into the real world. It might not meet those user expectations. So that helps with scale as well. We'll do it on a smaller scale first to see if there's interest, if there's client fit, if there's market fit. If there is, then we'll scale it up, and hopefully the cost is reasonable. We haven't had an unreasonable one yet, but I have one in my back pocket I'm working on right now, so I have to pitch that to my boss. See how that goes. And I'll let you know how that goes, because it's going to come right back to you, because we need to monitor the whole thing.
If anyone wants tips on how to pitch large language models projects to their boss, Lou, I think will be hanging out around here after and is pretty good at that. Cool. And then I think just building off of that, when you think about deploying these types of projects and actually putting large language models, putting models in front of your users, what are some of the considerations that you have when you're a principal research engineer? You're responsible for these types of models that are out there. What are some of your thoughts of BazaarVoice's philosophy, your development philosophy around this? Yeah,
so I really like this question. So I might take longer than I'd like to answer it. So I hope I won't stand between anyone and their beers. But the biggest concern I have is bias. And this has been a problem in machine learning for a while. And I see it all the time because we deal with user-generated content. Like, people are jerks, right? Like, people say awful things to people. And you can't assume that any set of user-generated content, no matter how large, captures the true demographics of the real world, right? So we know we have biased data sets, and we have to get that out of the way first. And that's a huge issue. So as an anecdote, like, 10 years ago when deep learning first came out, I was like, let me go train a convolutional neural net to predict which emojis go with images. So I downloaded a bunch of Instagram data, like 40,000 Instagram posts that had emojis, and just trained like a simple classifier to predict the emojis. And then any picture I threw at it of someone in a swimsuit, it would recommend the whale emoji. Because Instagram was like, weight shaming everyone on Instagram at the time. So it was like, rather alarming. We obviously couldn't put that into production. That's our biggest concern. And that kind of falls under a bigger umbrella of what we call quality, but really you could call, meeting users' expectations and having them trust you. This is a tricky area with large language models right now, because everyone's heard about ChatGPT and everyone's afraid of it. So if you say to a user, I'm going to use a bot to talk to you, or if I say to my customer, I'm going to use this large language model to talk on your behalf to your customers, their alarm bells go off. But if you say to them, I'm going to use this AI I have that answers questions on your behalf and cites its sources, which RAGs can do, then they're really happy about it. It comes back to AI explainability. So those are two of my biggest considerations in kind of shipping them out is bias and making sure we're presenting things the best way we can that are fair and not doing any harm, and explainability, which you kind of really need to understand your AI to make it explainable, which is why we pay you guys. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think that that's a pretty great segue into, when you're thinking about deploying these large applications, it seems like a few kind of recurring themes. There's scale and picking the right infrastructure to scale. And that's where you might want to go to a BentoML and learn how to use that type of product to really deploy at scale. There's bias and explainability, observability, and using that data responsibly, using your users' data responsibly. And then there's security as well, and data privacy, which is, you can't really get away from the fact that this data is can be sensitive at times, and depending on your application, that data may need to be kind of hosted in a certain environment, in a hosted environment. Chaoyu, how does BentoML kind of deal with these challenges around orchestration, and where might a user come to Bento to sort of address these challenges in production?
I think, first of all, a lot of especially larger teams, when you have multiple AI application projects going on, standardization is often the first thing people are looking for, right? If every project have a different way of shipping code to production, different way to do CI and testing, different way to evaluate those models, you will end up with data in different type of format. It becomes impossible to do any type of governance on top of that type of pipeline. So I think that's one aspect where BentoML at least help with the serving pipeline, the deployment processes, making sure across different applications they are consistent in a way that AI application developers can ship things to the infrastructure side, and they can scale easily in the cloud. Another example would be BentoML have native integration with Arise. So if one of your engineering team does that integration, and then every one of your BentoML powered application will have that kind of capability out of the box, making sure your team is enforcing those best practices across all your AI applications.
Yeah, I think that's super critical. Having been on the deployment side before at Spotify and other kind of ML companies like that, having a process as you're building up and especially starting is super critical. So picking the right tools as you begin. Morgan, how are we doing on time? We got about 5. Maybe at this point, I think it might be a good idea to open it up to some audience questions. So if any of you folks have questions for either Lou on deploying models in your enterprise, or Chaoyu on picking the right tools or infrastructure, any questions from folks here? Considerations on LLMs? Yeah.
I think people want beer.
Yeah, I think
we got one.
Okay.
You guys have a really large company dealing with a lot of customers, a lot of data, and you've been around for a long time. So question is, what do you really think of the LLM world? Is this very faddish at this point? Is this something you believe will take the kind of place that traditional ML, which is classification, clustering, and all those simpler techniques have? Because one of the challenges I personally find is that results are not very predictable. I can't say that the next time around it's going to say the same thing. This is, okay, it's good for chat, but can I make a decision based on that? Because 3 months later, I can't prove it to audit that this is why I took this decision, because now it gives me something else. So I don't know what you think about deploying it at scale in organizations that are subject to regulations, to oversight, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and maybe if I can repeat the question or attempt to reframe it, it's sort of, what do you think about LLM technology and picking that technology for tasks that maybe previously were used for traditional ML, and picking that type of those types of models for these types of applications?
Yeah, I'm actually going to read a little bit deeper into that question because I like the way you phrased it, where you said, is this a fad? And I had this exact conversation with my CEO yesterday. And I think this comes back to a perspective we can probably all share about AI, which is we, as AI practitioners, want to make people's lives better. So that means that we see AI as things that can augment the person, and I don't really want to replace anyone with AI. So I don't think that large language models making decisions is necessarily the way to go. I think that large language models augmenting people to make decisions 10 or 100 times faster is where we want to go. And in terms of whether LLMs are a fad, I actually don't think that they're a fad, but I don't care. Because I will take them for what they're worth and what they're good at as somebody who works in applied AI. Any new tool that comes out, I'm going to enjoy for what it's worth. That being said, there's plenty of snake oil in the media. There's plenty of buzz. But use that to your advantage. So right now at BazaarVoice, my main goal is to get every engineer using artificial intelligence in some way. And ChatGPT came out, and suddenly everyone has access to this thing. And everyone's excited about it. I don't even need to work there anymore. Everyone just wants to do it, right? So use that to your advantage and say, okay, everyone's really interested in this. Is it a fad? Maybe. I view it more as this is the Netscape Navigator analog. So Netscape, so the internet existed before Netscape. Netscape came out, suddenly anyone could go on the internet. The AI existed before ChatGPT. ChatGPT came out, suddenly anyone can interact with AI and think they're an AI engineer. But we know that the prompt engineering is only going to get you so far, right? But that's okay. We still have jobs for right now. We can use the excitement to our advantage to get people interested in it, and then educate them, enable them to do it, so that because everyone's gonna go down this route, right? It's now required that you know how to use the internet to be at your job. People are going to be required to be at least comfortable with generative AI technologies, probably 5 to 10 years. But people are kind of scared of it right now. They don't really understand the limitations. They're going to know the limitations really soon, and then nobody's going to kind of shrug at it. So I don't really mind that I think it's a fad in the pop culture sense, and people are just going to get used to it. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong, but I don't care. Yeah, it's my short answer, or my long answer.
Yeah, so in some ways, the barrier to entry to adopting AI has now become very, very low, right?
Yeah, basically doesn't exist. My daughter uses ChatGPT to write her bedtime stories, right? It's the best improv ever, right? Space unicorns, done. That's what she wants it to be about. That's what it's about. Right?
We have some startup founders in the room here. Some more startup ideas for Blue.
Check out my Amazon books. No.
Cool. It looks like we have one question over there. Yeah.
I have a quick question. You mentioned bias, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of really good ways to remove bias, and we did. In the hackiest startup way ever, which was to just disable any emojis that had bias, which sounds not as nice from a data science perspective, but sometimes you have to just do you have to hit the nail with a hammer and get it out the door, right? So there were a number of emojis we had to remove. I forget the pig was another one we had to remove, and you guys could use your imagination about the other ones. The poop one stayed though, because that was actually an emoji of itself.
Yeah. Cool.